Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté, and AKA we ruin our Sundays to brighten up your Monday.
Exactly. We ruin our Sundays to brighten up your Monday. And you know, as Teddy G says, hit the like. Do not forget to hit the like button. Should be as natural as breathing. And that is true. It should be part of the parasympathetic nervous system by now. It's a way to pay it forward because we do ruin our Sunday to brighten your Monday. And it's a way to hit back at the corporate overlords who try to control our destinies, what you watch, what you like. So give a like, also subscribe. Obviously, you're here, youtube.com/usefulidiots. Also, subscribe to us on Substack, where you get great extended interviews and bonus content. You got to see a cool debate between me, Branko Marcetic, and Aaron Maté about Tucker Carlson, the hottest Tucker Carlson debate online. You can find it there at Substack at usefulidiots.substack.com. And speaking of the hottest anything, we get the hottest after party that we offer you for free, if you can believe it. And that's at Call-In. And we do that right after the stream. So that's at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we take your questions there. Yeah.
Well, I have questions for Chuck Todd. And
Always.
Luckily, he's got the answers. So let's hit it with the Chuckster.
Good Sunday morning. Before we get to politics, it's another shooting. At least 8 people are dead, including children, after a gunman opened fire at a suburban outlet mall in Allen, Texas, not far from Dallas, before the gunman was shot and killed by a police officer who happened to be there. This is the second deadliest mass shooting this calendar year. When we came on the air last week, by the way, we were following the manhunt for another Texas gunman who had fatally shot 5 people after he was asked by a neighbor to simply stop firing his gun in his yard. This week, 6 people were killed in Henrietta, Oklahoma. In Atlanta, a gunman opened fire in a waiting room at a medical office building, killing 1 and injuring 4 others. And yet, despite the uptick in mass shootings this year, there's been no change in the political response to this growing gun violence crisis. It's yet another example of our broken political situation where polarization has made governing and any action impossible. The basis of both parties punish anybody that seeks any sort of common ground. We're seeing it in the response to the judicial branch, where there is clearly a growing cancer on the Supreme Court. A body that used to pride itself on judicial independence is now perceived as just another partisan branch of government in a polarized nation. In the eyes of the American public, the justices' robes are not black anymore. They're red and blue. Last year, just 1 in 4 Americans said they had a great deal of confidence or quite a bit of confidence in the Supreme Court, according to Gallup, the lowest rating in 50 years. And that was after the leak of the draft Dobbs opinion on abortion and before what we're dealing with right now, which is a slew of ethics issues involving the justices. What started out as a story about Justice Clarence Thomas accepting luxury vacations from a billionaire donor has become a flood of headlines questioning the court's overall ethics, and Thomas himself, with a private school tuition for Thomas's great-nephew being paid for, paying for Thomas's mother's home, paying for hundreds of thousands of dollars to a nonprofit that then paid a 6-figure salary to Thomas's wife, Ginny. And there was another report this week of a conservative.
By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Ginny Thomas. Do you remember? I don't know if you guys remember this, but she basically drunk dialed Anita Hill once.
Really?
Yeah, she left her a message. Yeah.
Wow. What did she say?
Just mad at her for accusing her husband, credibly, I would say, of sexual harassment.
Of putting pubic hair in her soda can?
Well, I don't think he did that, but he referenced it. I think
talked about it. Okay.
Yeah, he talked about it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Which is in itself is just, a fireable offense, honestly.
Yeah.
Activist paying Ginny Thomas under the table while he had business before the court. Thomas has not responded to any of the most recent charges, and after the first story came out about the vacations, he issued a statement simply saying he didn't believe the trips with, quote, close personal friends were reportable. Now, Democrats are demanding...
Even though it definitely is, because that's very clear that you are supposed to report travel.
Katie, please, we all have close personal friends who are billionaires who fund our various life endeavors, including the tuition of our relatives and
Our mother's homes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very
Right,
relatable. Leave Clarence Thomas alone.
You're right. Yeah. Well, we're going to hear very shortly why people are actually upset, why people actually go after Clarence Thomas. It's pretty upsetting. So stand by for that.
A formal ethics code for the Supreme Court, which right now has no binding code of ethical conduct, like the one that actually governs every other federal judge in America. But most Republicans right now, afraid of angering the base or looking like you're giving the left anything, are rallying around Thomas, using whataboutism and rejecting any tightening of ethics rules.
He's obviously been targeted because he's a conservative black man, and
there you have it. I mean, Clarence himself referred to the sexual harassment allegations as a high-tech lynching.
Yeah. It's really funny to see Republicans playing the race card of when this is the kind of thing that they would constantly dismiss as whatever.
Woke mind virus.
Yeah, exactly. The woke mind virus.
Right.
But hey, if it works for one of their guys, why not?
Yeah, why not?
he's on the Supreme Court in an effort to undercut the legitimacy of the court.
Many people, some in the media, many in Congress, want to make this about Justice Thomas. But you can't make this issue about Justice Thomas unless you're willing to make it about any number of other justices who had very similar situations that they're dealing with.
Now that is true. I mean, this I think is particularly egregious, but obviously, I mean, it's not above us to acknowledge that there needs to be an ethics code that applies to all justices. Obviously, this isn't about having it just for Clarence Thomas. But the nice thing is when you're talking about powerful people and corrupt people, it is truly bipartisan. He's just especially egregious.
Same broken partisan politics that are eroding the Supreme Court's reputation are making it impossible for members of Congress to move forward and make deals and legislate, whether it's on addressing mass shootings, on immigration, Title 42 is set to expire, or on the debt limit with the risk of default coming as soon as the end of this month. So as leaders from both parties prepare to meet at the White House on Tuesday, President Biden, who claims he's not negotiating right now on the debt ceiling, is clearly preparing to negotiate on the debt ceiling. But he clearly hopes that he can drive a wedge between Republicans as he does it.
There's a Republican Party and there's the MAGA Republicans. And the MAGA Republicans really have put him in a position where, in order to stay Speaker, he has to agree. He's agreed to things that maybe he believes, but are just extreme.
He looks like he needs a nap. Yeah.
Well, luckily, he'll have plenty of time to rest because Democrats are not going to be having any debates in this primary.
Right. Which is so good because people are so thrilled with Joe Biden. Oh, wait. Yeah. No, they're not. I forgot about that part. They're actually not. Which is why it's such a great idea for the corporate media to totally ignore the people who have already started challenging Biden within the Democratic Party. Why even bring them up?
Well, we're going to get to that shortly about the lack of enthusiasm for Biden. But first, this is Texas Governor Greg Abbott, another mass shooting in his state, and here are his thoughts.
People want a quick solution. The long-term solution here is to address the mental health issue. And one last thing about this, Shannon, and that is it truly seems today that America is more divided than we've been in decades. And we got to find a way in this country where we can once again reunite Americans as Americans and come together as one big family. And in that regard, find ways to reduce violence in our country.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly divisions over any number of heated topics, including this one. I want to get to the border because...
So, yeah, address the mental health crisis. That sounds great. Sure. Yeah. I'm all for it. But there's still a lot of guns. And there's still more guns per capita than other countries. And there's still a lot more gun shootings and massacres in other countries. And if you just increase mental health services, not everyone's going to get access to them. And people are still going to get access to guns. I mean, like, how many times can you make the same point? It's just basically there seems to be a constituency that is okay with mass shootings. And that's just They're asking that everyone else just accept that as reality.
Right. Also, it's just so funny because these are people who don't really believe in social services and don't believe that healthcare is a right.
Sure.
And it's so obviously cynical that they're tough on crime. They don't care about any of the things that contribute to crime, like poverty or mental health issues, except for now, because they want to have a solution that has nothing to do with guns.
Yeah, like how do they want the mental health crisis to be addressed? Because they don't want to pay for it through like social services. So, like, what do they want? Like, they want people to meditate more on their own because that's free. You know?
Yeah. Well, you can buy the Calm app. There's a free version of it. It doesn't give you all the stuff that the paid app does, but yeah.
So that's their plan, basically. Yeah,
Maybe,
use the Calm app. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not getting endorsed by the Calm app, by the way.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's like, it's just weird. It's like they talk about mental health, but they don't want to pay for it. So what do they actually mean?
Right.
Meditating, anything free, any free mental health solution, going for a walk.
Right. Cold showers. Aaron, you told me about cold showers as being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the Republican plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
For gun violence.
Mindfulness, practicing mindfulness.
Yep. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
They should listen to the episode we did with Narvaez.
That can help solve the gun crisis for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that one episode
about nesting.
Yes.
Yeah,
sure.
about nesting. Yeah,
sure.
The family nest. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, here's one Fox News guest, and this was actually not on a Sunday show, but this is such a illustrative clip for the Republican plan to tackle gun violence that we thought we'd play it. So this is a Fox News guest on how they think we can tackle the gun violence crisis.
And just like General Mathis once said, be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet, because you never know. If you're at your workplace, your business workplace, something you might say could possibly cause someone to snap because they've had a very bad day. You don't know what kind of day someone's had, and your words can make the difference between someone having a good day or a bad day. So always speak with kind words to somebody, and your words can make a difference.
So let's hear that again. Speak kindly to people, but also this.
Do. And just like General Mathis once said, be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet, because you.
So be polite, be professional, and also have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Right. Being first trying nice language, but if your nice language fails, I like how it runs the gamut. You know what I mean? It's like mindfulness, mindful speech. Got to try those things. Definitely exhaust those things. And at the same time, walk around with the preparation of killing everyone.
Plan A, be nice. Plan B, kill.
Yeah. Massacre.
You can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong. Yeah. Covers all the bases. Yeah.
It really does. It really
Someone wrote in the comments, that's psychotic. And it's true. This may be an example of a mental health problem that we need to be addressed.
Get that man some services.
Yes. Get him some services. And
but
be very nice when you offer them to him.
Yeah, but not through public spending. So let's get him a cold shower.
Yeah, a cold shower, yeah. Or do a GoFundMe or something for him.
All right. We mentioned earlier that Joe Biden's not very popular. Let's see how unpopular Joe Biden is. This is a new poll out on just how much voters don't want Joe Biden.
Rick Klein here to break it down. And Rick, this poll is just brutal for President Biden.
Absolutely, George. And you talked earlier about that record low approval rating for President Biden. It's actually 6 points down just since February. And the skepticism over his leadership extends deep inside his own party. Only 36% of Democrats think that their party should nominate Joe Biden for a second term. 58% say they would support someone else or prefer someone else. That's despite the fact that the entire DNC, most of the Democratic establishment, has rallied behind President Biden. And you're seeing real weaknesses in the coalition that powered Joe Biden to the presidency back in 2020. Biden carried independents by 13 points against Donald Trump. He is now trailing Trump by 9 points among those same voters. He carried black voters by 75 points in 2020. Now he is up just 35. That may sound like a lot, but the fact of the matter is, in modern politics, that is not the kind of number that a Democrat needs to.
We forget this, but like Trump was blamed for a pandemic, and that pandemic was very consequential, obviously, And you have to wonder, if not for that pandemic, would he have lost? Because that race was still pretty close ultimately. And there's no pandemic this time that they can use against Trump. And so these numbers are not looking very good for Biden. And who would have thought? Who could have predicted?
Who could have predicted that? And I like the way they're saying it out loud. I mean, they have no choice but to say it out loud, which is that the people want someone else, and the DNC and establishment absolutely are not letting that happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing all they can to make sure that doesn't happen.
To be victorious. And then, of course, that does spill over into the head-to-head matchup, the hypothetical rematch, Trump versus Biden. Right now, a 7-point edge in our poll from in Trump leading Biden. And in fact, it's an identical number with Ron DeSantis in a head-to-head that might happen next November. That tells us at this very early stage, George, that this race is shaping up a lot more about the incumbent president, Joe Biden, than it is about any of his challengers.
And Rick, as I mentioned with Senator Lankford, President Trump, at least right now, appears to be strengthening his hold on his front-runner status for the Republican nomination.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've seen Donald Trump's numbers go up in the last couple of months across a range of polls, and most of the other candidates either going down or staying around the same. Ron DeSantis at 20%. Of course, that is not even half Trump's total right now. Everyone else in the single digits. That includes our ABC News contributor Chris Christie, who's considering a run of his own. He's at 1% in this poll. And when we ask people to focus in on the top candidates, to choose just among the top contenders, you actually see Trump's number go up a little bit. Ron DeSantis does as well, but still, he's nowhere near where Donald Trump is across the country. The other candidates, again, still in the mid or low single digits. And this is interesting because despite all of that, despite the strength that we're seeing for Donald Trump right now, a strong majority of Americans think he should be facing criminal charges across a range of investigations, including on this one. 56% say that he should face charges over his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. What's interesting to me about this, George, is that even among that 56%, the people that think that, yes, Trump should face criminal charges, 18% say they would vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden anyway. That tells you a lot about Trump's potential strength, but maybe more than that, some of Biden's weaknesses. And that
also shows a real, progressive attitude towards potential felons. People charged under the law. People are seem more tolerant now and forgiving than in the past. So, that's maybe that's a positive sign. But
right. Yeah, we do believe in redemption.
But as much as we make fun of Biden, he does have going for him that Trump will likely be his opponent. And yes, Trump narrowly lost in 2020, but he is such a liability at this point with all of his criminality and his insane comments. Like, he recently said that for better or for worse, like, he was asked about his grab them by the genitals comment.
Right,
and he said for better or for worse, that like that's how it is, or something. Or fortunately or unfortunately, that's how it is. So I mean, he's still Trump, and the more people get a reminder of that, probably like the less I imagine they'll be inclined to vote for him. But it's just imagine another Biden versus Trump.
I know.
Like, is really the best we can do. It's bad for everybody.
Right. I mean, but the truth is, like, all these people are like, we cannot afford to have a debate because we absolutely need to defeat Trump. Well, you probably should. Two things. One is you want Biden to practice debating with people before he gets to Trump. And also, maybe the other ones would do better against Trump.
Yeah, sure.
You got to explore all the options. Yeah.
Yeah. Much like Bernie would have done better against Trump in 2016.
Right.
Yeah, you have to have options, but they don't want it.
No,
they don't want it.
And shout out, actually, George Stephanopoulos, of all the morning shows that we watch regularly, all the big ones, that's the only one that actually had John Carl interviewed Marianne Williamson. I mean, it was a very condescending infantile, dismissive interview, but at least they had her on.
And shout out to RFK Jr., who was appointed Dennis Kucinich as his campaign manager, which I think is pretty cool. Dennis Kucinich has like long been the most principled, or one of the most principled members of Congress when it comes to issues of war. And I don't know. I had my doubts about RFK Jr., but when he does things like that, that to me is pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
To have an actual progressive being your campaign manager. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. And it's just newsworthy. Sometimes like people are like, oh, so you like him? He's a nut job. It's like, this isn't even about whether I like the person or not. Do we only let people in debates if we personally like them? And as you said, I think he has a good foreign policy platform. I'm actually going to have on my show, by the way, either tomorrow or next week, just a little cross promotion here. I'm going to have a debate between former guest Michael Tracy and historian, political scientist Aaron Good about using obviously RFK as a hook about JFK and whether he was anti-war or not.
Well, that's interesting. See, I'm very much in the camp of, and I'm sorry, this is going to make people mad. I apologize in advance, but if you've read Noam Chomsky's Rethinking Camelot, and you've read Seymour Hersh's The Dark Side of Camelot, which I've read, then the idea that JFK was some sort of, opponent of the deep state who was going to end the Vietnam War is ridiculous. It's just according to those books. But so I'm not sympathetic to the view that JFK was some sort of anti-war figure. Right. But obviously, I do think there are strange things around his assassination, and it's weird.
Well, that too. We'll get to that also.
We'll have an answer. But where I don't agree with Michael Tracy is he's very skeptical of RFK Jr. And
very much. Yeah.
Everything I've seen from RFK Jr., he's calling out the Ukraine proxy war. He's talking about Julian Assange. Dennis Kucinich is his campaign manager. So I don't fault RFK Jr. for who his family is. And I think his entry in the race is exciting. He's talking about things that nobody else is. And I think that's great. Yeah. But, this is a very contentious issue. People are still debating about who JFK really was, 60 years later. And that's fine. It's just, it's ultimately, I don't think it's the most important issue, but it's interesting that it's such a divisive issue on the left because people feel very, very, very close friends of mine feel very differently than I do about it. So it's interesting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of it's also a question of semantics. What does it mean to be anti-war? I mean, are we talking about relative to other presidents?
Well, no, but the belief is that JFK was going to dismantle the CIA. He was going to withdraw from Vietnam, and that's why he was killed. Right. And personally, I think there's nothing.
No evidence.
What I know of history to support that, but people feel very, very strongly in another direction, and it was 60 years ago, so who knows? I don't know, but I'm not an expert, but I'm very influenced by those two books, and so that debate will be very interesting. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. All righty, what do we got next? Let's see. What's our next clip? My document.
Up next, we have we have immigration news. Title 42 is about to expire. So this is a report from the border.
The clock is ticking down on an end to Title 42, another flashpoint in the immigration debate. But here on the U.S.-Mexico border, it's not just a policy change, it's the front lines of a humanitarian crisis. In South Texas, the Department of Homeland Security says they've encountered an influx of migrants ahead of Title 42's end, driven by an uptick in Venezuelan nationals. Still, others.
So Venezuelan nationals are apparently comprising the bulk of this uptick in undocumented migrants seeking asylum. But again, you'll never see the connection made between our sanctions policy and our attempted regime change and this influx of migrants. It's as if these things are in separate universes, never, ever, ever. And when you're trying to destroy a country's economy, that's going to make people flee. That's just that's just basic logic. But yet it's never applied to any of these stories.
Exactly. Yeah. So they never bring it up, or if they do bring it up, they don't ever bring up the kind of, it's like, oh, well, it's not war. People always, it's not war. It's just sanctions. So who cares?
Yeah. And, there's an op-ed in the Financial Times, and it's based on a new study from CEPR, the Center for Economic and Policy Research. It's by a Venezuelan opposition economist. And he points out that 29% of the global economy is under Western sanctions.
Wow.
29% of the global economy.
Is he critical of that fact?
He's very critical of it. Yes.
Even though he's opposition.
Yeah, he hates the Maduro government, but he also recognizes that U.S. sanctions have destroyed Venezuela's economy and made the country really put it in a really tough position. Right. So he's honest enough to recognize that. He's more honest. This is an opposition economist who's more honest than the entire U.S. media, who's willing to, who completely ignores the role of U.S. sanctions in destroying Venezuela's economy. But funnily enough, recently, those guys on Pod Save America, like Ben Rhodes and whatever those other people's names are.
Well, he's a guest, right? He's not a host, but he's an Obama bro.
I'm not sure his status is a guest, but anyway, he's on there a lot, and he, like along with the others who previously supported sanctions on Venezuela, they were like, yeah, you know what? Actually, we kind of have to recognize that it's making Venezuelans' life really difficult, so maybe we shouldn't do that.
Wow.
Like great job after, I don't know, 4 years.
I think maybe they've been watching our show, because I feel like that's a point we make pretty consistently.
Yes. Anything positive in the world probably comes from people watching our show. Pretty much. And
so,
anyone's mind being blown and having their minds changed probably comes from watching us.
Yeah. It's the UI bump. Yeah. It's the UI revolutionary bump. So they should give this show a like right now, because we know that they're watching.
So that's all we need from this clip. I just think it's, like, it's just interesting how they will report this surge of migration, but they'll never talk about our role in causing it.
Right. And it is a pretty good, like, teachable moment. Like, maybe you should be as critical of sanctions as an opposition leader. Just a kind of rule of thumb. Yeah.
All right. Well,
more immigration.
The Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, was interviewed about the upcoming expiration of Title 42.
Menendez, who's the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a Democrat, said the administration has ignored his proposals. He objected to the sending of troops, and he criticized lack of planning. So if you have people who are border state senators who want to do something, and then you have the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee saying he wants to do something, why is the administration ignoring that or pushing it aside?
The administration is not ignoring it.
Well, Menendez said that.
We are pressing forward. And by the way, Senator Menendez, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, set forth a really thoughtful document with a number of pillars of action, and we have indeed implemented a number of those.
Henry Cuellar, Democrat, said he has confidence in you and Homeland Security, but he said the White House is holding you back.
Untrue. One team, one mission, and we are prepared to execute it.
Wow, it sounds like an action movie.
One team, one mission, yeah.
One mission, and we are prepared, and they're prepared to execute it, yeah.
United to imprison immigrant families.
Right, fleeing countries we help destabilize.
Yeah, and we should explain, by the way, so Title 42 basically makes it easier for the government to expel people. On top of how easy it already is, this makes it even easier,
right?
And that's expiring.
Because it was based on COVID, and COVID is officially over, apparently, yeah. But I love that. Good for them for getting shit from Henry Cuellar. That's what they get for. You had the Democrats robocalling and stumping for Henry Cuellar, an anti-choice, pro-NRA Democrat, against Jessica Cisneros, who is, pro-choice and good on gun issues. So, and she came so close to beating him, Cuellar, the incumbent, but it really was the Democrats putting their all into keeping her out of power that gave Cuellar his victory.
And what's Biden doing? Biden is sending troops to the border, which when Trump did it, we were told that was like the new Third Reich.
Right.
But when
Biden does it.
And kids are still in cages, by the way. Quick update. Kids are still in cages.
Quick up,
We didn't free all the kids in the cages.
Right. They're still in cages, yeah. Well, we have another clip about immigration. This one from friend of show, Kirsten Sinema, talking to Margaret Brennan.
You said the administration failed to create a workable plan to process migrants after May 11th, Title 42. They would say they've got the troop deployment of 1,500s, processing centers, a phone app, expansion of legal migration, regulation that will bar migrants from asylum if they did not first seek asylum in a third country. Do you support any of what the administration has done?
Well, these steps, which all have been announced in the past week or so, are helpful. These are very helpful. Having 1,500 troops along the U.S.-Mexico border is helpful. It is a border of over 2,000 miles, though. So 1,500 troops isn't going to get the job done. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
We also are very concerned that all of this is happening in the week or so before the rollout. Just today, I was on the phone with the sheriff of Cochise County. He has gotten no information from the Department of Homeland Security or the federal government about what the flow is going to look like, about what they can expect for processing in terms of how long it takes to process migrants. He's gotten no information, neither have I, about how many buses there will be available to transport migrants. Now, he's gotten the information he does have from me, because I call him every few days, but he's not gotten that information.
Whoa, sounds a little obsessed with the sheriff. She calls him every few days.
From the Department of Homeland Security. And Margaret, what's unfortunate is that I'm asking for that information and I'm not getting it. And so either the administration has that information and they're choosing not to share it, which is a problem since we're the ones who are going to deal with the crisis, or they don't have it. And that's even more concerning, because how do you prepare for an inflow of migrants when you don't know what you're going to expect?
And that hasn't been shared with the governor?
It has not been shared with the governor. I spoke with the governor yesterday.
Wow.
It has not been shared. So we do not have this information. There are 3 nonprofit organizations in Arizona that provide incredible assistance to our border communities. One is in Yuma, one is in Tucson, one is in Phoenix. They don't have this information. And they're the ones who are responsible for accepting the migrants after they're released from custody. So while it's wonderful that the administration is announcing things like a 1,500 troop deployment and these new processing centers, which will not be operational by next Friday, those are good things. Those are aspirational. That's not the same as operational. Rent the buses, hire the drivers, build the soft-sided facilities so that we can process individuals. We need more holding capacity. I mean, let's be realistic here. And that's we're not prepared for that. And that's frustrating, Margaret. And the reason why it's frustrating is because I know that means that the sheriffs in our southern border are going to be bearing the brunt of it. And our men and women of Border Patrol will be working even longer shifts.
She cares about that one sheriff. That's really what she's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
She's talking about that one sheriff,
Yeah. What a strange political career she's had. She used to go out with
Party.
Code Pink, right? And the Green Party, and now she's independent, she says, of both parties.
Remember her famously voting down raising the minimum wage with a little move like that and a curtsy?
And that strange outfit too.
Yeah, she 100% looked like she was out of Clueless, the movie Clueless.
So dressed like you're in the movie Clueless, voting down the minimum wage. Strange political career.
You know what she has not brought up, interestingly enough, and you don't hear this. Part of the issue with immigration, of course, is that undocumented people don't just come here and, generally speaking, launch startups. They usually are hired by people. You never hear anything about punishing employers.
Yeah. True.
Which, of course, if people cared about this issue the way that they claim to, they would. But they know that people are going to keep employing people, and they just try to. They never want to punish the rich people employing them, or the exploitative people employing them. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, but like last week, Jesse Waters of Fox News was talking, and he was like, coming into work, I saw a whole family of undocumented immigrants picking through recycling, and they were like, "How do you know they were undocumented?" He goes, "I can tell. I can tell."
He is Doctor.
Yeah, he's Doctor. Yeah.
Undoctor, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell. All right. Well, let's move on to another looming crisis. This is the debt limit and negotiations over efforts to raise it. And Republicans really want spending cuts. So they're willing to possibly risk the U.S. defaulting on its debt. So here is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
Now she's trigger warning. She's extremely charismatic, so your mind may be blown. So let's hear what Janet has to say.
Paint a picture for everyone. What happens on that day? Let's assume for the sake of argument it's June 1st. What happens that day if the debt limit has not been extended?
Well, Treasury finds itself in a position where we're unable to pay all of the bills that come due that day. And this would be really the first time in the history of America that we would fail to make payments that are due. And, you know, whether it's defaulting on interest payments that are due on the debt or payments due for Social Security recipients or to Medicare providers, we would simply not have enough cash to meet all of our obligations. And it's widely agreed that financial and economic chaos would ensue. U.S. Treasury securities are the safest bedrock security underlying the global financial system. A failure of the United States to honor all of its debt would call into question our credit worthiness. Even as we get very close to this date, if Congress doesn't act, we're likely to see financial market consequences. In 2011, there was a steep decline in the stock market and our borrowing costs. Back in 2011, the U.S. Was downgraded by the credit rating agencies. There would be permanently higher borrowing costs for Americans for buying a home, buying a car, and a failure to raise the debt ceiling would cause a steep economic downturn.
Is Yellen truth-telling, or is Yellen lying?
Lying, Yellen.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
sounds scary, whatever it is.
Yeah, and this is also just like political theater that always happens because Republicans, obviously, they want to cut spending no matter what. So they'll use any excuse to do that. But also Republican presidents often run up the debt. You know,
sure.
Bush did that. Trump did that. So it's all just hypocrisy and theater. Yeah.
The one accomplishment Trump had was cutting taxes mostly for the wealthy.
Right.
And that didn't help with the debt. That's for sure.
Nope. Right. Huge upward transfer of wealth.
Not that people come to us for our economic expertise, but
well, they should.
I mean, they're wrong. They're missing out. Alrighty. Well, speaking of Katie, speaking of cutting, Katie, and wanting to cut social spending, James Lankford is among those. He's a Republican senator. He wants to cut social spending.
Right.
And he seems to welcome this moment of a potential default because, well, he's going to explain that there's something good to come out of it.
Right. Silver lining.
We're the only country in the world that has a debt limit like this. There's only 2 countries that have any kind of debt limit. We're the only one that has a debt limit like this one. The reason we have it is because it forces a moment to be able to talk about debt and deficit and to say, where are we going on this? Deficits are rising very, very quickly. The American people feel it. We feel it in our economy. It's entirely reasonable to be able to sit down and say, if we're continuing to add more and more debt, let's talk about it.
But it's about pay.
By the way, but really quickly, I have to add this as a little personal anecdote. I once wrote some abortion piece at Huffington Post, and it was like a comedic listicle. And I mentioned that he looked like a fetus, and he tried to get Huffington Post to take it down, which they didn't. So obviously he's a little defensive about his looking like a fetus. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lankford.
But it's about paying bills you already incurred, isn't it?
House and Senate.
It's about paying bills the United States has already incurred.
I mean, fair point. So he's saying the debt limit really is an opportunity to have a conversation. It's like a conversation piece, like it gets a conversation going. And George Stephanopoulos has to remind him, like, isn't it actually just about paying your bills?
Right. Yeah.
Is that what it is? Like, nope. Yes, that too, but also it's a great conversation starter.
Right. It is. Yeah. It's great water cooler talk.
And the conversation he wants to have is basically cutting social spending. That's really the only conversation he wants to have. Yeah. So let's risk default to get a conversation going to deny people, the meager social assistance they already receive.
Right. Never let a crisis go to waste.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, what do we got next? We got Jake Tapper, right? We got Jake Tapper talking to Dick Durbin. This is a good one.
It is a challenge in the Senate Judiciary Committee to do our business. For example, you raised.
Oh, so he's talking about Dianne Feinstein right now, who's on medical leave and hasn't really said when she'll come back.
We need her. It is a challenge in the Senate Judiciary Committee to do our business. For example, you raised the question of a subpoena, and I haven't reached any conclusion on that. But if we go down that path, we need a majority on the committee. Right now, with her absence, it's a 10 to 10 committee, and the majority is not there. And a proxy vote doesn't count in this circumstance. So it's a complicated situation. I hope she does what's best for her and her family and the state of California and makes a decision soon as to whether she's coming back.
I mean, all due respect, sir, you and your fellow Democrats were very ginger and very polite when it came to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and not pushing her to retire when you had a Democratic majority in the Senate. How'd that work out for you? How'd that work out for Roe v. Wade?
Ouch.
Well, how'd that work out for you is that's a that's a knife twister.
Words.
Yeah,
it's a knife twister. Yeah,
Jake Tapper.
Yeah. Well, and of course he's referring to the fact that RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was quite old and had cancer and did not want to retire because her personal career was more important than the fate of the country. And that meant that she died during Trump's term, and he got to name a Supreme Court justice. And had she retired during Obama, obviously Obama would have gotten to name one. But she did have a great slogan. I don't think it was hers, to be fair. I think it was neoliberal feminists created it. And it was a picture of her in plank position, and it just said, "Keep planking." So women denied abortions can remember that. It was worth it. She kept planking. Yeah. So let's hear what he has to say.
I can tell you that you can play these out and try to guess what the Supreme Court opinions resulting from it will be. The bottom line is, though, we have in the past had members of the Senate, I can think of a handful as I'm sitting here, Democrats and Republicans, who've been absent because of medical conditions for lengthy periods of time. I want to treat Dianne Feinstein fairly. I want to be sensitive to her family situation and her personal situation. And I don't want to say that she's going to be put under more pressure than others have been in the past. But the bottom line is the business of the committee and of the Senate is affected by her absence.
President Biden's going to meet.
Notice he said her and her family before he said the country. Because that is the order of importance.
I mean, on the one hand, it'd be nice to, people would be lucky to have supportive colleagues like Democrats have, where it's really time for someone to go and they refuse to push them out. I mean, it's nice to be supported that way, but when it comes at the expense of so many fundamental rights, you have to wonder, where your priorities are. Like, be a good friend, be a good supportive colleague, or stand up for basic rights. I don't know.
Right.
Everyone's got different priorities.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Who are we to judge, Aaron?
Yeah. All righty. Let's move on to the Democratic and Republican members, ranking Democratic and Republican members of the House Intel Committee. This is Jim Himes and Mike Turner. They just went to the Middle East to help spread democracy and freedom, and they got a report back. They're going to come back and tell us about how it went.
And joining me now, the top two members of the House Intelligence Committee, the Republican chairman, Mike Turner of Ohio, and the ranking Democrat, Jim Himes of Connecticut. Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Chairman Turner, let me start with you because you both met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What can you tell us about the meeting? Did you express any concerns to Netanyahu over his push to overhaul Israel's legal system, weaken it, not to mention including extremists in his cabinet? All of this has caused tremendous unrest domestically in Israel.
And not to mention brutalizing Palestinians, which we never mention.
Right. Well,
because we don't care.
Right. Jake doesn't care about that.
Yeah, we don't care.
Right.
It's like, millions of people who you're ruling over in an apartheid system, and we're arming you as you bomb them and make their lives miserable. Yeah, but we're not going to mention them because, You
certainly can't use the word apartheid because when a human rights expert was nominated to be on some human rights commission. The Biden administration blocked it, even though he had actually worked under Obama. He was on the commission under Obama. They blocked him from this position based on his use of the word apartheid to describe Israel, even though that has full mainstream human rights organization. It's a consensus among mainstream human rights organizations that it is indeed an apartheid state.
Right. So our trip comes just on the heels of Speaker Kevin McCarthy being here, and our focus largely being from the Intelligence Committee. We're on the relations between the United States and Israel and how we can help strengthen the security situation in the area. We also stopped in Jordan and Egypt, and talking to all three countries,
By strengthen the security situation, he means increase the insecurity of everybody in the region by increasing our hegemony. And so, bombing Syria maybe a little bit more, building more settlements in the occupied territories, bombing Gaza, basically increasing everyone's insecurity. That's what he means by that.
Sure.
We're all very much encouraging the United States on a policy basis to have a stronger role, thinking that there are real opportunities to increase the security situation here, but at the same time, painting a picture that there are serious threats in the area and the United States should be playing a role.
So Congressman Himes, Netanyahu recently told CNN that a credible military threat is the only way to stop Iran from its nuclear weapons program and the like.
Correction, Jake. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. That's according
Aaron,
to
you're
US
quibbling. You're quibbling
yeah,
here.
but they don't. They have a nuclear program, but they don't have a nuclear weapons program. And it's just taken as fact that they do, but they actually don't. And that's even according to U.S. intelligence, which says that Iran has shut down their nuclear weapons program a while ago. Now, what they do have is a program to enrich uranium. And the reason they have that is because Trump killed the Iran nuclear deal. With the support of Netanyahu, obviously, who went to Congress and urged them to not do the Iran nuclear deal. So Iran does enrich uranium, which would put them on the path to building a nuclear weapon, but they don't actually have a nuclear weapons program. Those are different.
Jake doesn't
Netanyahu
mind
about
that.
to do everything in his power to prevent that country from developing nuclear weapons. Negotiations on Iran's nuclear program have obviously been on the back burner for months, if not years. Do you think the White House needs to treat this as a higher priority? And based on your conversations overseas, how close is Iran to building a nuclear weapon?
Well, the Prime Minister, as he has been every time I've met with him, and that's probably 3 times, he was very, very focused on Iran and probably said to us 9 or 10 times that, it was intolerable for him to imagine an Iran with a nuclear weapon. That's not news, of course, if you've spent time around Bibi Netanyahu. Now, we know where he is on the JCPOA. The reality is that the JCPOA, whatever you thought of the deal, when it was in effect, the Iranians were not enriching more uranium. Now they are. So the problem, of course, is that with Iran so brutally abusing its own people, I think the prospect for negotiation is arguably further away than ever before. So we're in a little bit.
Well before there were protests in Iran over the so-called morality police, the Biden administration was refusing to get back into its own Iran nuclear deal. Well before that. They were continuing the Trump position of killing the Iran nuclear deal and refusing to lift Trump sanctions. So to blame Iran's crackdown on protesters is just so dishonest because well before that, the U.S. was refusing to return to the deal. So this is just a convenient excuse to avoid the U.S. returning to its own agreement.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Like blaming Iran for this. And, it is interesting that this was one of Obama's major achievements. And Biden, is for some reason did not want to continue it. He's been a Trumpian, not an Obama when it comes to this deal.
Yep. Absolutely.
All righty. What do we got next? Oh, we got it. I like this guy. I like him even more than Mike Turner. Let's hear from House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer. He's got some exciting news.
Can you tell us about this latest investigation of influence peddling on a sitting president? I know that you're planning a press conference this Wednesday. What will we learn?
Well, Senator Grassley and I received a tip on a whistleblower. Senator Grassley was the lead in this. We reviewed documents from the legally protected whistleblower, highly credible whistleblower that would implicate Joe Biden in a pay-for-play scheme, in trying to set up a deal to receive funds to he and his family in exchange for foreign policy decisions. Now, that fits a pattern, Maria, of what we've seen with these bank records. And on Wednesday, we're going to present to the American people all the information that we've received thus far pertaining to bank records. We're going to disclose many of the different LLCs, many of the different transactions that all these different Biden family members have gotten from our adversaries around the world. Now, we don't believe this was just a coincidence that all these Biden family members were receiving money from this web of LLCs into their personal bank accounts. We believe this was done in exchange for something that then Vice President Biden and now President Biden would have done. So this whistleblower is going to provide some very crucial information to our investigation, and we've given the FBI until May the 10th to produce this document. So the ball is in the FBI's court with respect to this whistleblower.
You are sure that this document exists?
100%.
What if they don't release the document by May 10th? What if they decide to indict Hunter Biden for having a gun illegally before your press conference?
My message to the Department of Justice is very loud and clear. Do not indict Hunter Biden before Wednesday, when you have the opportunity to see the evidence that the House Oversight Committee will produce with respect to the web of LLCs, with respect to the number of adversarial countries that this family influence peddled in. This is not just about the president's son. This is about the entire Biden family, including the president of the United States. So we believe there are a whole lot of accounts that the IRS and the DOJ don't know about, because we don't believe they've done a whole lot of digging in this. And we have. We've spent the past 100 days poring over bank documents. I've used subpoena power to get these bank documents. We've been meeting with former associates of the Bidens in their different influence peddling schemes. We've been meeting with whistleblowers. We know exactly what this family was doing. And by all accounts from the media reports that we're getting, what they're looking at charging Hunter Biden on is a slap on the wrist. It's a drop in the bucket.
All right. Well, shots fired. Let's see if he delivers when he holds his news conference on Wednesday. They've been pushing this for a while. Let's see what they got.
Yeah, let's see what they got. Can we trust them?
And if they have anything, of course, I'm sure a group of former intelligence officials will get together and dismiss everything as a Russian information operation, as they did with Hunter Biden's laptop. But hey, let's see. Some Republicans have promised big bombshells on this front before, but haven't delivered.
Right.
So we'll see.
Right. That is a bipartisan thing. The walls are always closing in on both sides of the aisle. Yeah.
Okay. Well, turning over to one of our favorite shows.
So good.
The natural progression from being a White House spokesperson to getting your own show on MSNBC was carried out by Jen Psaki, who now hosts a show on MSNBC. And here she is on the Justice Clarence Thomas controversy.
Unless you've been off the grid for the last month, and I guess good for you if so, you've probably seen or heard something about ethics scandals surrounding Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And as jaw-dropping as the reporting has been, what has also really struck me are the responses coming from Justice Thomas and his allies. That is to say, they have been shockingly bad. Either these people are incompetent communicators, or they think the American people simply won't notice what exactly they're up to. Let me walk you through a few of them.
It's just weird. I think she's right on this, but she's also like a professional liar. That was her job at the State Department. That was her job at the White House. So it's weird professional liar is lecturing us about another professional liar.
Right.
It's just strange. Is it
And
the best
also-
we can do?
Right. And also, I meant to say during the Comer clip that, given how much he's praising whistleblowers, it would be cool if he actually, cared about major whistleblower and whistleblower disseminator Julian Assange.
Afraid
Anyway.
not. No,
Right.
afraid not.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about those documents.
Right.
He wants Assange in prison like everybody else,
Right.
including Jen Psaki.
Right.
Yeah.
And what made me think of
Bipartisan.
that is that Jen Psaki is a much better professional liar than Karine Jean-Pierre. No disrespect to Karine Jean-Pierre, but as we've said in the past, she never knows that she can never look up. She can't look people in the eyes. And of course, she was asked about Assange last week on Freedom of Press Day and had literally nothing to say. I mean, all she said was like, I have nothing to say on it.
That was the funniest answer. She couldn't even look up, and she didn't provide anything of substance on Julian Assange. She just was like, yeah, we really support press freedom, and yeah, we're also working to free Evan Gershkovich from Russia.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay, but I asked you about Julian Assange. Yeah. Anyway, we just love. It was
so bad.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it happened after we filmed, or else we would have included it in our Thursday Throwdown. Yeah.
We apologize to all you
Yeah.
Slutty audience members.
Yeah.
It happened too late for us, but
Right.
we'll get to it this week, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Alrighty, back to Jen Psaki.
In response to a story detailing undisclosed gifts and trips paid for by Republican mega donor Harlan Crow, Justice Thomas put out a rare statement admitting the reporting was true and brushing it off as something friends do. First of all, this friendship started after Clarence Thomas was already confirmed to the Supreme Court. He was a Supreme Court justice already, and Harlan Crow gave him a ride on his private plane. And I don't know about you, but I can't say I know many people whose friends pay for their family vacations totaling $500,000.
You know what, Jen? You probably do, actually. You probably do.
Yeah.
I mean, the Biden family, the Clinton family.
Right.
You probably actually, I do those people. But, it's a good contrast between her and Karine Jean-Pierre. Jen Psaki obviously is good at lying, and she enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Right.
Karine Jean-Pierre does not like it. That's why she looks
Right.
down all the time. It's
Right.
it's like sad to watch. It's like,
Right.
Karine has to lie again.
It reminds me a little bit of the Hillary Clinton versus Bill Clinton thing. Like, it was always so unfair. Bill Clinton is such a gifted liar, and Hillary's just so bad at it.
He really is the best.
He's so
He really
good,
is. Yeah.
But okay. And then there was conservative activist Leonard Leo's response to the Washington Post report that he directed under-the-table payments to Thomas's wife, Ginny Thomas, emphasizing that the paperwork should have, quote, no mention of Ginny, of course. Of course! Leo didn't deny the story, telling the Post, knowing how disrespectful, malicious, and gossipy people can be, I've always tried to protect the privacy of Justice Thomas and Ginny. Shame on all of you out there for gossiping about shady secret payments to the wife of a Supreme Court justice. Outrageous. Then there were the responses to the report that Crow paid upwards of $100,000 for the private school tuition of Thomas's grandnephew, who the couple were raising as a son. Now, it's not like Thomas didn't know he was supposed to disclose this sort of thing. Just a few years earlier, he did disclose a $5,000 gift for his
All right, we're going to skip to her point because we don't need this recap. We've heard this before.
generous. Sounds philanthropic. And I'm sure that it was out of the goodness of his heart and just by coincidence that one of the families benefiting is none other than Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife. Look, the term gets thrown out a lot, but this is the definition of gaslighting. They are trying to gaslight you. In case there is any doubt in your mind, you are not crazy for thinking this is all insane.
This is her shtick. It's like, okay, listen, I know you're feeling nuts, but it's not you, okay? But it's like she's gaslighting because no one actually thinks that they're feeling crazy or whatever. It's like she's the one doing the gaslighting. She did that
Maybe
about
she's projecting.
She did that about like when Donald Trump was arrested recently in New York. She's
Right.
like, okay, don't freak out. I know this is crazy.
I know,
but
don't freak out, yeah.
It's like nobody's freaking out. Who cares? Like no one cares. Yeah.
Well, yeah, she does offer very good kind of therapeutic advice. She also once advised people to I think it was when Dobbs was leaked, something serious happened. She told people to have margaritas and go to kickboxing classes.
So relatable. So
relatable,
relatable.
yeah.
Yeah. So relatable.
Yeah.
I immediately went to my margarita machine and then went to my kickboxing class based on that advice. Yes. Yes. Alrighty. Let's move on to. We can skip this next clip. Because we're actually running out of time.
Yeah, we're at
So, I think we can leave it there.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Any gems we can do for the Thursday Throwdown. Yeah.
Right.
Guys, this has been a great Monday morning, and make sure that you come right now and join us at Callin, the hottest after party.
And we'll see you there. And we'll also see you at usefulidiots.substack.com, where you can sign up to support us and get bonus content. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.